Record.
And I'll accept it.
Yes. I'm here live with Tünde Erdös. Yes. And we're going to be talking about coaching presence. It's an absolute joy to meet Tünde because, well, funnily enough, with a group called Coaching Presence, you can probably tell I'm fascinated by coaching presence because I really believe it's the essence of what we do as coaches. So, and I kind of remembered that Tünde had a book coming out and then completely forgot till another coach reminded me about it. So we're here now. Tünde, I would love you to tell us the story about why you decided to start this research, that incident in the book with your client.
Mm-hmm. So let me also say thank you for having invited me. Okay. You know, the first moment of coming in is always like, okay, so what am I gonna say? Also a moment of presence, right? What am I gonna say? Yeah, how did it start? Well, it was not a comfortable moment, I must tell you, and it was towards the end of the year 2016, and I was back then what I thought an established executive coach, and there was an organization that invited me to coach a female client because she was meant to be hired to board level. And back then, the board consisted of male colleagues only. And the CEO wanted to, so there was this idea of diversity and inclusion and this philosophy that needed to be also lived in the organization. And his idea was to promote a female employee to board level as well. And he said, okay, so there is an opportunity and if she would be happy to have executive coaching. And she said, of course, yes. And I remember that we had this moment of the hiring interview, and then I remember that the CEO, but I remembered later on, so I'm just telling the story from the beginning. And the CEO was saying to me, you better make this one work. and I remember what I said, yeah, sure. So I took it for granted what was said to me, and I took it for granted this finger that said, you better make this one work. Because for me, performing and being an executive coach and doing a good job, blah, blah, so sure. But then what happened is very early on in the coaching engagement, the client, I don't know, at a certain moment, the client was saying, hey, Tünde, when you're saying something like, I was acknowledging something that she had said, when you're doing this, why does your body go backward? And I was like, what? What happened? What happened? So I was totally oblivious to this phenomenon of congruence between the spoken language, the spoken words, and the communication, the spoken communication, the verbal one, and the non-verbal one. And it was an important moment because she said, well, you know what? I know that coaching works and I feel very happy, and I know that there is progress, and I know that the CEO is very happy and stuff. But you know what? I think coaching is nothing for me. And then I remember that I said, okay, so I understand. How about winding up the coaching engagement in a normal way, like we have a final session and we explore and we feedback, and so you come for a last session. And she said, okay. And in that last session, she was happy with me, and I'm eternally grateful to her for this, that she was willing to explore the relationship, to look into this phenomenon of, so what happened, because it seemed to have been very important for her in terms of feeling safe.
Yeah.
And trusting. And so I found out that there is more to being with the client than just a powerful question or progress or whatever. So there is something that what is it that this incongruence between verbal and non-verbal? And then I started looking out into the literature and exploring the literature, and I found that in psychotherapy, there has been a lot of work done on what is called synchrony, nonverbal synchrony, movement synchrony between coach and client. And I mean, in therapy, it's patient and therapist. And then I thought, okay, and actually they call it like energy in the room. So in psychotherapy, the therapeutic relationship has been videotaped, in smaller population sizes, and they found that, and they removed the audio material. So the only thing that they were analyzing was the video material and the relationship between therapist and patient. And they found that there is some energy between two people that determines. Pardon me?
It's not just one way, it's two way.
It's two ways, exactly, Marianne. It's two ways. It's not just that there's one and the other one is receiving. It's sender and receiver, and it's not premeditated. It's not a conscious process of, oh, well, okay, it's not body language. It's not what we know from, like I work with my body consciously. Not at all. It is something that, as if the body were holding some truth that no matter how we try to control, it's not a bit controllable, and at one point it will give us away. And then it actually brought me back to come back to the feedback session with the client, how I was holding, or my body, I wasn't, but my body was holding the pressure from the CEO that had said, you better make this one work, right? And which I took for granted, totally for granted, because for me, I'm sure. But I discounted for the fact how actually this had been a trauma in my own life before, that I don't like fingers pointing when they put pressure on me, and that my body's holding this. And it will show this pressure because I knew that it was an important coaching engagement. And so the body did not lie. And the client was picking it up and was not trusting my words that much, was rather trusting this phenomenon, this energy that was emanating from my body. So this is a long story to how the research came about.
It's a very useful story, though, because it shows us the nuance of what we do, and yet the meaning that can be picked up and assessed from it. That this, I know I've had some feedback from a supervisor that if I step forward, I go into telling mode, and I'd never noticed that about myself. I think we're kind of privileged now that we can do a lot of our own recording and looking back at our own work as coaches to help us understand how we come across. Yeah. I was saying to you before we went live that also I can come across quite overbearing as well, and actually just to learn to kind of lighten up a bit when I look at myself recorded.
Yeah.
I would love to understand how you did your research as well. I'm an academic at heart, although I've moved on a bit in terms of career, but I would love to understand what was your research project, because there was a lot of coaches involved.
Yeah, a lot of. So I'm full of gratitude, because if I didn't have the opportunity to hire so many coaches, and we eventually had 184 coach-client pairs, and that's a huge population, statistically speaking. So that's really, really, I'm super grateful. And we did the project internationally. So I had coaches from Venezuela to Sydney to South Africa. So it was really, really to Finland, and so across the world. So we also have cultural evidence that it works. It's not just like an Austrian phenomenon because I'm based in Austria, or it's really across cultures what we looked into. Okay, so how did I do that? So what we did is I went back to psychotherapy, and I was just to see how did they do that, because when you do research for the first time, you cannot just do whatever you want. You need validated instruments.
You need research.
Yeah, research. When you do research, you need validated instruments. You cannot do stuff that you want to do. You have your own ideas how to, especially not on a PhD journey. So I got in touch with a professor at Bern University in Switzerland, who had developed a software which is called motion energy analysis, that really just looks into the dynamics of movement between two people in the room but the people need to be offline. So it would not work online the way we are doing it right now, because the technology is not there yet. But if you videotape a session, and we videotape sessions over time as well, because we looked into the process, the coaching engagement as a process from session to session. So what you can do is that you upload the 2 videos into this motion energy software, and it will look at the pixels and the movements and can tell apart a genuine, real, synchronous exchange of responsiveness. Because what the software looks into is like, how responsive are you genuinely? Not like how you listen to something and then you think and then you react in a way, in a conscious way, but the spontaneous responsiveness that emerges in the room between 2 people. So the software can tell apart this genuine, real, spontaneous responsiveness that is actually the quality of presence, as opposed to any random movement that happens between 2 people. And then it produces some beautiful charts and graphs and stuff. So basically what we did is we took video. So we needed to invite the coaches to videotape their sessions. And then we analyzed those sessions in terms of movement energy for spontaneous and explore them for spontaneous responsiveness through this software, or with the help of this software.
And this isn't what, the whole idea of kind of mirroring, that you try and create a kind of a trust and intimacy with somebody by kind of, if they fiddle with their left earlobe, you fiddle with their left earlobe. This is much more subtle than that, isn't it?
It's nothing to do the one with the other. So it's nothing to do with mirroring. Thank you for bringing this up, Mariana, because no, it's really just about it's a genuine responsiveness that emanates from the body. It's not fidgeting with this, or it's not a premeditated. I learned that if I move forward or whatever, then the client will feel safer, or this is nothing to do with body language. The way we are used to understand body language. So far, it's really something that is like schools of fish. Fish don't speak. At least not our language. What do? Ooh, they do this, ooh, spontaneously, they communicate. And they can protect each other, they can feel safe. And how do they do that? They do it because, and excuse my French, but it's really like that. We need to pay attention to how what does nature do?
Yeah.
It's all over in nature, like how do chameleons fit in with nature? Well, because actually they don't change their color. They're normally green. They will only change their color when they want to communicate something. They want to say like, I'm angry, or they want to do a little swagger, or they are not intent on adapting. They communicate very skillfully, but their normal state is green. And with fish, it's similar, like they are only schooling when there is pressure in the water. So they have alongside their bodies, each side of their body, they have sensors. The way our body has sensors. We have senses. We have sensory organs. And we are not using those sensory organs, which are the very first instrument that picks up impulses from the environment and then processes it. And then the brain starts processing it. But the first thing that happens with us human beings, just like in nature with schools of fish as well, we pick up pressure moments, pressure from the other person, or not pressure, not necessarily pressure, it can also be something else, but impulses. So we call it impulses from the outside world. And in coaching, it's the coach, right? Or the client. And they are giving each other impulses. And these impulses are first hitting the body. And the body is made of senses. And the way the body is then processing, the sensory organs are processing that information, how we are perceiving, and then how we are in the brain sense-making, thinking, and then feeling. Those are the last steps. But the first thing is we are sensing, like the fish in water are picking up through their sensory organs, and then they know how to move and how to close in and close out, and spontaneously.
Love it. So knowing that, then that basis of this recording process that you did for your research, I'd love to understand some of your findings, because it's complicated. It's not as straightforward as do more of this and do more of that. There's a kind of, and if this then that, there's kind of there's more subtlety. I keep using that word, but there is.
Yeah, what makes you use that word, subtle, huh?
I guess what I'm trying to say is, how might we deepen our presence or improve our presence, or what do we need to know from your research?
Like based on the findings. So the first myth, or what I call a myth, and because it was a surprising thing for me, is that because I got trained as a coach, like it's coaching presence. The very word coaching presence is like about the coach. And we found, because we had those interactions, this is not about the coach. Presence is not about the coach alone. And I was like, wow, so there is a dynamics. So the coach is equally influenced by the impulses emitted by the client as vice versa. But in coaching, I got told, oh, you get detached and we detach from each other. But we can't see this. And it's not useful either. So one of the subtleties, so allow me to take up that word because it seems to be important to you, is, and that's what I'm calling in the book also, building up the capacity to be professionally proximal. So have a proximity with the client, understand we cannot stay detached. And it's nonsense. The client doesn't need a machine that is preset to ask the super powerful questions. The clients want to see, in the first place, a human being. That's what my client wanted to see and didn't see a human being. So a machine that was responding actually to pressures.
Responding to the finger pointing and going.
Yes, exactly. And my body wasn't lying. So to be conscious of something that the clients need in terms of us as a human being in the first place, being present through our senses. Sensing like, okay, I'm bringing in needs as a coach and it's okay. Not to collect, because sometimes coaches say that, and I used to do something similar. Oh, I do my 5-minute meditation before a session. And we know that this doesn't help because you cannot shut down. It's not through controlling yourself that you will be more present. It's through acknowledging and paying attention, like, okay, I'm bringing in this need, or I'm bringing in a bad mood, or because I had, I don't know, a fight with my spouse an hour ago, just taking an example, and to just like acknowledge it's there, and I cannot think it away, because it is lodged in my body, and the body keeps the scores. The body keeps the scores, and it's better to notice, sense it, like where exactly is it, so that you know, okay, because the minute you acknowledge that, I don't know, tension in the back, or maybe in the face, or I don't know, everybody responds in a different way, it miraculously dissipates because it got acceptance. And then through this, that's the professional bit, okay? That's a professional bit of, okay, I know I'm a coach. It's actually not really helpful to stay detached because I can't anyways, because I'm a human being. It's not helpful for the client either. So I'm bringing in, I'm acknowledging, and maybe it will be helpful for the client. So let's just sit with it and see how it might be valuable in the exchange with the client, because sometimes it is.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And I think this is reflected in our new competency around kind of embodies a coaching mindset as well, that we have this is part of how we bring ourselves, we are the most important coaching tool, really. We're not machines, we're humans, and that's why people want to work with us. And I think that kind of brings me on to the question about use of self in coaching. What's the fine line between use of self and coach agenda? How can we get that balance right between bringing our stuff or talking about our stuff and it becoming all about us?
I think I'm not a guru or something. I can only
Oh,
talk about the findings or something.
I'm trying to be.
And I like saying, and I keep saying, whatever we speak here, let's hold it lightly, okay? Because it's the first bit of research that has been done into what's happening on a nonverbal level and the power that it has in the coaching relationship. But to answer your question is, I think practice makes perfect. But in a first, let me give you an example, because you know we can talk theoretically like until the end of times. But I had a client, it was a few weeks ago. It epitomized this sharing of being present with through the senses. So we had actually our first session, and the client we had a chemistry session before, and then the client was coming, and it was a male client. The client knew what coaching would be about. So the client started talking, just talking. And I was sitting there and just noticing. So the client started, it's the client's process. So I didn't interrupt that. But I started noticing like how this, because the client was for me, for my senses, heavily downloading something important. So was talking. So something seemed to be very, very important for the client. And I was just like sitting, and I noticed that I could not lean back. I was perched on a chair, like I'm perched here. This time I'm having my legs crossed, and in that session it was like I was sitting there like, okay. And I noticed that I wanted to lean back and I couldn't. And I was holding that uncomfortable moment for a while, and I said, I can't. Why can I not? What is this? And at one point, I said to the client, I would like to share something. Would you allow me to share something? And he said, yeah, sure. And I just shared that moment, like how I was sitting there and I was noticing the downloading, and I felt this pressure of, okay, I would like to lean back, but I can't. What might that be? Because, yeah, I don't know if it was my agenda or not. I couldn't care less in that moment. I just noticed there is something happening. And I will just share because I can't fake it until I make it. And normally, so I learned in my career after the research, I've learned to trust processes. And when it is emerging, like something like this emerging in the coach-client relationship, I have learned to trust this moment that it is relevant. So I shared it, and you know what the client said? The client said, oh, I know, that's what people tell me too. I always come into my meetings with my employees, and he does the same thing. He starts like that, and people are overwhelmed. They can't even sit back and really sit down and listen to him and what he's got to share with the employees, because he's not aware of how he's sharing. And he brought that pattern to the very first session, the very first moment, the way he started out. And he had this realization. He's like, oh, I know, that's what my employees tell me too. So we had his first thing, no goals, no nothing yet. The first thing that he said, oh, thank you for sharing. But I was in two minds. It's true, I wasn't sure, like, should I share, should I not share? I mean, come on, have the curiosity, have the courage as coaches, go and share and see and trust the client. That the clients are not stupid either. And trust yourself as well, that you're holding intelligence, your body's holding hidden intelligence. That is important.
I think there's something as well. It's that you're not sharing to put the meaning on your client. You're sharing your experience and wondering asking your client to wonder what that means to them.
Yes, exactly.
You're not telling them.
Yeah, that's it. So, and I didn't say anything about, like, I didn't interpret it. I just said, so this is what's going on. Yeah. And the client knew immediately and was then doing the meaning making.
Exactly that. I had another question, which was, oh no, that's the use of self versus the coach.
Can I come in and ask you a question? Yeah. Because, you know, we are talking about presence as if it were something out there, and it's a phenomenon and a methodology and a mastery skill. But actually, like, how are we with each other? How do you feel like we are present with each other right now?
I think that I feel that you're more energetic than I am. So I think that I have a trick that I need to do to keep my head focused, which is I know I need to still my body. And I think that's what I noticed, that you're high energy, I'm quite a low energy person. So I think there's that interesting thing. But I think we have an equal amount of fun. And I think that I'm tuning into that as well. What do you think?
You know why I was prompted to ask this question is because I am finding myself talking here all the time, and I'm like, this is not a conversation. This is a monologue. This is not about like. And I noticed that actually. Wait a second.
I'm doing it. I tell you the other thing going on, which is the sharing out loud. So to prepare to go live, I had the whole, it's holiday time in Ireland, so my daughter's here. She's got a million cousins in the house next door, and I was like, okay, I'm shutting doors. I'm going to need to be quiet for half an hour. I would say most of the children in Ireland are currently in the room next door to me playing loudly. So I think I'm also concentrating a lot and going very quiet and still. So that could be something to do with it.
Yes. and you see, like, and all these things are also what are happening in a coaching relationship.
Yeah.
There is that noise out there that might be impacting how I believe I need to be more focused.
Yeah.
And just a way of addressing it and just like putting it out there, placing it, like, let's just address it. It's there, right? There's a lack of equilibrium between how we are having this conversation. So let's just talk about this and create an equilibrium together, because we're not stupid. We know that it's there. and it's also more credible in how, and also it feels safer to spend time with each other. Because why are we here? We are here to just talk or create a meaningful dialogue. I don't know.
Exactly. And I wanted to talk to you, and I realized that we're coming towards the end of our time, but I wanted to talk to you a bit about, we mentioned before we went live about ecstasy and my research, and that link, why I'm so interested in coaching presence, because back in my 20s, I was into rave culture. I've explained this to you, I'm explaining this to the people watching. Interested in rave culture and the impact of the drug ecstasy and people going to raves and suddenly almost transcending their egos and this real sense of shared experience. And now, as a 50-year-old woman looking back on my career and trying to make sense of it, I've been trying to work out what the connection is with what I do now. And I think it's something to do with presence and that kind of ecstatic experience almost. It's a very similar process I go through when I feel like I'm really in sync with somebody that I'm coaching, that it's almost both of our egos almost as we connect in a way that goes beyond the individual. There's something more. There's almost a third party there between us. And now I'm doing a lot of talking. There's something in that, and I think that's why I was so interested in your research about measuring it, because I know I used to work for a man that knew Rupert Sheldrake, and the whole idea of the morphogenic fields, the bits between us, the transpersonal, is very fascinating. And I wonder whether coaching presence falls into that category, that it's almost, it's a kind of a transpersonal entity. I'm not quite sure where it falls into states of consciousness, but I kind of feel that for me to coach at my best, I am shifting my own consciousness in a way.
Well, I'm very much intrigued by raving, because it's on the tip of my tongue. I want to ask you, like, what is raving about? What when you rave, what happens? Because what is it that makes it? Because you seem to see the essence, so you are connected to presence.
Yeah.
In a miraculous way. What is for you actually through raving? How do you make that connection?
So I think, there's a combination of, for my PhD, I was looking at a lot of the old stuff about shamanism and the impact of music and trance. So I think, but there was the drug, MDMA, ecstasy, does change consciousness, but it really boosts serotonin. So coming from a sort of teenage girl where you'd go to nightclubs and people would drink alcohol, suddenly we were in a different environment where people were using different drugs and dancing and having massive boosts of serotonin. a euphoric shared experience where it felt like you were in a telepathic community with other people around you. I think that was a fairly short-lived period. I think things have changed, but there was certainly, I've had that experience of kind of understanding God is love, B, having a very shared sense of community and almost a unity of community through an ecstatic experience. And I think the link now for me is that it goes beyond seeing me as an individual and my client as an individual, and really tuning in at a very deeper sensory level to the person in front of me.
Yeah.
When I'd love to say I can do that all the time. I of course can't, because sometimes I am thinking about my child in the next room and what I'm gonna, have for breakfast tomorrow. But in an ideal world where I've done my stuff, that's I think when you're really in that zone with somebody.
So you know what, and if we take that, what you've just said, into our relationship in the here and now,
yeah,
and we just figured out, okay, so you're more of a low energy person, and I show up as a higher energy person, okay? And that also that you said, okay, so there's something transpersonal happening, and there is definitely, probably, I don't know, like a brain, I haven't looked into the brain. So serotonin being at play, it doesn't matter. What we need is just noticing exactly that. So there is lower energy, there is higher energy. And just to notice, so how, because you impact with your lower energy, you give me automatically, unconsciously more space. And I'm taking unconsciously that space.
Yeah.
But if we bring this up and make it conscious, because we pay attention to how we are actually having this different levels of energy, then we can create together and take it to the we can transcend
it. Isn't it?
Pardon me?
It's partnership.
And then it's a partnership, and then we can, exactly. And then, because our bodies know that there is higher and lower, but how are we really working with this? Because it's material to be worked with.
Yeah.
So, and knowing that you have lower, I can give you more space because we have choices, and we always want. And that's what we also found. The second myth is that then there is a needs exchange in the coach-client relationship. And it's okay, and we need to learn to pay attention to the needs exchange, that both coach and client are bringing needs into the room.
I think this is a really interesting one in terms of that question around use of self versus coach agenda, because I was getting a memory about, I'm into horses, and if you're riding horses, and if you look at the amazing dressage riders at the Olympics, if your horse is going too fast, you can slow your body down and the horse will adjust to your speed. And then I think this is the issue, if it would become too coach agenda if we do that deliberately. But if we have the conversation and say, okay, how fast do we want to go here? That's bringing the presence to the fore, isn't it? That's recognizing that we can have that we can do that together.
Yeah, I love that. Exactly. So making it conscious how energies are at play, and then working it with it for the client's benefit, and partnering with the client, as you said. So it's a partnership, right?
It is.
So and we can only do that when we make processes conscious.
Absolutely. Tünde, I realise that we've gone slightly over our time lot. I always have a kind of half hour in mind, because I think that's what people's
can you see what's happening with high energy people? They will mess up your agenda, okay?
they muck things up. Is there anything else that we need to say? I will put all the details again about your book in the comments, but is there anything else that you want to say to wrap things up?
A lot, but you know what?
Okay, let me ask you a question then. What's the kind of one thing that you think people could do that would improve how they turn up as coaches, or their own presence?
Okay. Learn to work more with your senses. The sensory organs of seeing. We are not using our sensory organs to our full capacities. We're not really, because we also have different ways of using our sensory capacities. We have a predisposition, either we are more audio or video, or so to use the senses, like, am I more audio? Do I make sense more through hearing or through seeing or being touched by something? and make a distinction between what you are sensing and what you are perceiving and then thinking and feeling and learning that.
I love that. And I think that's a very useful thing for my journey as a coach, certainly, was actually to kind of think less. I say to the people that I mentor, do less, be more. Just turn up the volume.
Do as the fish do.
Exactly. And I have geese at home, and I'm constantly trying to herd my geese from behind by using hand movements and stuff. So yeah, I love that. Do like the fish do. Thank you so much.
Hey, Mariana, thank you so much.
I'll drop you a note to say
yes.
and share some stuff with you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.